Hello and welcome. Today we will be discussing some crucial information that will help you kickstart your journey to the cloud. This video will cover various cloud concepts, focusing primarily on the fundamentals and discussing a few models. You can prepare for the AZ900 and the AZ104 exams by understanding the Microsoft Azure fundamentals. The goal of this video is to narrate the Microsoft Learn content, demystify these concepts, and add additional information to make these concepts easier to comprehend. You can follow along with the Microsoft Learn page. A triangle with the initials MS for Microsoft in the center shows the page number of the Microsoft Learn unit. Microsoft Azure is a cloud computing platform with an ever-expanding set of services to help you build solutions to meet your business goals. Azure services support everything from simple to complex. Azure has simple web services for hosting your business presence in the cloud. Azure also supports running fully virtualized computers, managing your custom software solution. Azure provides a wealth of cloud-based services like remote storage, database, hosting, and centralized account management. Azure also offers new capabilities like artificial intelligence, AI, or the Internet of Things, IoT, focused services. In this series, you'll cover cloud computing basics, be introduced to some of the core services provided by Microsoft Azure, and will learn more about the governance and compliance services that you can use. Azure Fundamentals is a series of 3 learning paths that familiarize you with Azure and its many services and features. Whether you're interested in compute, networking, or storage services, learning about cloud security best practices, or exploring governance and management options, think of Azure Fundamentals as your curated guide to Azure. Why should I take Azure Fundamentals? Well, if you're just beginning to work on the cloud, or you already have cloud experience, Azure Fundamentals provides you with everything you need to get started. No matter your goals, Azure Fundamentals has something for you. You should take this course if you have a general interest in Microsoft Azure or in the cloud. You want to earn your official certification from Microsoft, either your AZ900 or your AZ104. The Azure Fundamentals Learning Path series can help you prepare for the exam AZ900, AZ104, and even some of your security exams. The first exam most people come to when they take their Azure Fundamentals is the AZ900. Some people skip it, go straight to the AZ104, but the 104 is recommended before you start any of the security certification. So if you're looking at the AZ900, you can see on the screen we have the 3 domain areas of the AZ900. First, you want to describe the cloud concepts. Then you describe the Azure architecture and services. Next, you describe Azure management and governance. So you can see the weights on the screen, 25, 30, 35, 40. Broke down kind of variable depending on which questions you get. Introduction to Cloud Computing. In this module, you'll be introduced to general cloud concepts. You'll start with an introduction to the cloud in general. Then you'll dive into concepts like shared responsibility, different cloud models, and explore the unique pricing method for the cloud. If you're already familiar with cloud computing, this module may be a review for you. After completing this module, you'll be able to define cloud computing. Describe the shared responsibility model. Define cloud models, including public, private, and hybrid. Identify appropriate use cases for each cloud model. Describe the consumption-based model. And compare cloud pricing models. What is cloud computing? Cloud computing is the delivery of computing services over the internet. Computing services include common IT infrastructure, such as virtual machines, storage, databases, and networking. Cloud services also expand the traditional IT offerings to include things like Internet of Things, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. Because cloud computing uses the internet to deliver these services, it doesn't have to be constrained by physical infrastructure the same way that a traditional data center is. That means if you need to increase your IT infrastructure rapidly, you don't have to wait to build a new data center. You can use the cloud to rapidly expand your IT footprint. Microsoft provides a short video on the quick introduction to cloud computing.
What is cloud computing? Just like when you shop for your own computer, cloud computing lets you choose the power and features you need to run your software. The difference is, with cloud computing, the PC is in a cloud provider's data center instead of physically with you. This lets you pay for only the services you use. Plus, someone else gets to manage the upkeep of the computer. Each cloud provider will have their own selection of services to choose from, But the basic services provided by all cloud providers are compute power and storage. Compute power is how much processing your computer can do. For example, when buying a home computer, you may choose a computer with 8 gigabytes of RAM and the latest processor to run the software you need today. But as the load on the computer grows, you find that it slows down. With cloud computing, you can add and remove compute power as you need it. This saves on costs, since you only pay for the resources you use. Storage is the volume of data you can store on your computer. A traditional computer has limited hard drive space. Over time, you may have to run out and buy another hard drive to store more data. With cloud computing, you can request more storage as you need it. Cloud providers manage the upkeep of the computer, so you don't have to. They will make sure that there are backups, that the operating system is up to date, as well as making sure that everything is up and running 24 hours a day. So as your business grows and your computing needs change, you can quickly bring on new computing resources in a cost-effective way.
Now let's describe the shared responsibility model. You may have heard of the shared responsibility model, but you may not understand what it means or how it impacts cloud computing. Start with the traditional corporate data center. The company is responsible for maintaining the physical space, ensuring security, and maintaining or replacing the servers if anything happened. The IT department is responsible for maintaining all of the infrastructure and software needed to keep the data center up and running. They will also be responsible for keeping all the systems patched and on the correct version. With the shared responsibility model, these responsibilities get shared between the cloud provider and the consumer, which is you. Physical security, power, cooling, and network connectivity are the responsibility of the cloud provider. The consumer isn't co-located within the data center, so it doesn't make sense for the consumer to have any of those responsibilities. At the same time, the customer is responsible for the data and information stored in the cloud. You wouldn't want the cloud provider to be able to read your information. The consumer is also responsible for access security, meaning you only give access to those who need it. Then, for some things, the responsibility depends on the situation. If you're using a Cloud SQL database, the cloud provider would be responsible for maintaining the actual database. However, you're still responsible for the data that gets ingested into the database. If you deployed a virtual machine and installed a SQL database on it, you'd be responsible for the database patches and updates, as well as maintaining the data and information stored on the database. With an on-premise data center, you're responsible for everything. With cloud computing, those responsibilities shift. The shared responsibility model is heavily tied into the cloud services types, covered later in this path. Infrastructure as a service, IaaS, or platform as a service, PaaS, and software as a service, SaaS. IaaS places the most responsibility on the consumer, with the cloud providing being responsible for the basics of physical security, power, and connectivity. On the other end of the spectrum, software as a service places the most of the responsibility with the cloud provider. The platform as a service is in the middle ground between infrastructure as a service and software as a service. It rests somewhere in the middle and evenly distributes responsibility between the cloud provider and the consumer. The diagram on the screen highlights how the shared responsibility model informs who is responsible for what, depending on the cloud service type. Who is responsible? You're always going to be responsible for the information and data stored in the cloud, devices that are allowed to connect to your cloud, cell phones, computers, tablets, and so on, the accounts and identities of the people, services, and devices within your organization. The cloud provider is always responsible for the data center, network, and hosts. Your service model will determine responsibility for things like operating system, network controls, applications, and identity and infrastructure. Now let's talk about some of those cloud models, starting with the private cloud. A private cloud, in some ways, is the natural evolution from a corporate data center. It's a cloud delivering IT services over the internet that's used by a single entity. Private clouds provide a much greater control for the company and its IT department. However, it also comes with greater costs and fewer benefits of public cloud deployment. Finally, a private cloud may be hosted from your on-site data center. It may also be hosted in a dedicated data center off-site, potentially even by a third party that has dedicated that data center to your company. A public cloud is built, controlled, and maintained by a third-party cloud provider. With a public cloud, anyone that wants to purchase cloud services can access and use resources. The public availability is a key difference between public and private clouds. Hybrid cloud is a computing environment that uses both public and private clouds in an interconnected environment. A hybrid cloud environment can be used to allow a private cloud to surge for increased temporary demand by deploying public cloud resources. Hybrid cloud can be used to provide an extra layer of security. For example, users can flexibly choose which services to keep in the public cloud and which to deploy on their private cloud infrastructure. The table on the screen highlights a few key comparative aspects between the cloud models. On-premise refers to deploying computer resources such as servers, storage, and networking equipment within a physical location owned and operated by an organization. On-premise means hosting and managing your IT infrastructure within your facilities rather than relying on cloud services or third-party data centers. This gives organizations direct control over their resources, security, and data, but also entails responsibility for maintaining upgrades and security measures. For example, I have an old micro merchant server in my garage. I used to use the server for all my computing needs. I installed Windows Server, had server files, and played with it. I had no cloud accounts then, so I had an on-premise or traditional infrastructure model. When I switched to the cloud, temporarily, I had a hybrid environment when I used both the cloud and my server. Today, the noisy old server sits powerless in the garage, and I use a public cloud for all my research, tutorials, and computing resources. The fourth and increasingly likely scenario is multi-cloud scenario. Use multiple public cloud providers. Maybe use different features from different cloud providers, or maybe you started your cloud journey with one provider and are in the process of migrating to a different provider. Regardless, in multi-cloud environments, you deal with two or more public cloud providers and manage resources and security in both environments. Azure Arc is a set of technologies that helps manage your cloud environment. Azure Arc can help you manage your cloud environment, whether it's a public cloud solely on Azure, a private cloud in your data center, a hybrid configuration, or even a multi-cloud environment running on multiple cloud providers at once. To clarify, what is Azure Arc? It is a service offered by Microsoft Azure that allows users to manage and govern resources across multiple cloud providers, such as Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud, and an on-premise infrastructure from a single platform. It provides a consistent and unified management experience for your hybrid environment. With Azure Arc, you can provision, monitor, and manage resources across different environments, creating a cohesive and efficient management system for your multi-cloud and on-premise resources. Whether you're just starting or an experienced user, Azure Arc simplifies the management of your hybrid infrastructure by providing a single point of control.
What if you're already established with VMware in a private cloud environment?
But want to migrate to a public or hybrid cloud? The Azure VMware solution is a cloud service offered by Microsoft Azure in partnership with VMware. It enables organizations to run their VMware-based workloads natively on Azure infrastructure. With Azure VMware Solution, organizations can seamlessly migrate their existing VMware-based applications and workloads to Azure without re-architecturing or refactoring. They can leverage their tools, processes, and investments in VMware technologies while benefiting from Azure's scalability, flexibility, and security. It is a dedicated instance of software a single customer or organization uses in Azure, integrated with Azure services. The integration allows organizations to extend their on-premise VMware environments to Azure, enabling hybrid cloud scenarios and seamlessly moving workloads between on-premise and Azure. It also provides access to a wide range of Azure services such as Azure Backup, Azure File Storage, and Azure Site Recovery for enhanced capabilities and integration with the broader ecosystem. Overall, Azure VMware Solution simplifies the migration and management of VMware workloads to Azure, offering a familiar and consistent VMware experience while providing access to the benefits and services from the Azure cloud platform. When comparing the IT infrastructure model, there are two types of expenses to consider: CapEx and OpEx. CapEx is capital expenditure, and OpEx is operational expenditure. CapEx is typically a one-time upfront expenditure to purchase secure tangible resource. A new building, repaving the parking lot, building a data center, or buying a company vehicle are examples of CapEx. In contrast, OpEx is spending money on services or products over time. Renting a convention center, leasing a company vehicle, or signing up for cloud services are all examples of OpEx. Cloud computing falls under OpEx because cloud computing operates on a consumption-based model. With cloud computing, you don't pay for the physical infrastructure, the electricity, the security, or anything else associated with maintaining a data center. Instead, you pay for the IT resources you use. If you don't use any IT resources this month, you don't pay for any resources. The consumption-based model has many benefits, including no upfront costs, no need to purchase and manage costly infrastructure that users might not use to the fullest potential, the ability to pay for more resources when they're needed, the ability to stop paying for resources when they're no longer needed. And with the traditional data center, you try to estimate the future resources needs. If you overestimate, you spend more on your data center than you need to and potentially waste money. If you underestimate, your data center will quickly reach capacity and your applications and services may suffer from decreased performance. Fixing an under-provisioned data center can take a long time. You may need to order, receive, and install more hardware. You'll also likely need to add power, cooling, and networking for the extra hardware. In a cloud-based model, you don't have to worry about getting the resource needs just right. If you find that you need more virtual machines, you just add more. If the demand drops and you don't need as many virtual machines, you remove the machines as needed. Either way, you're only paying for the virtual machines that you use, not the extra capacity that the cloud provider has on hand. Cloud computing is the delivery of computing services over the internet by using a pay-as-you-go pricing model. You typically pay only for cloud services you use. Plan and manage your operating costs, run your infrastructure more efficiently, scale as your business needs change. To put it another way, cloud computing is a way to rent computing and storage from someone else's data center. You can treat cloud resources like you would resources in your own data center. However, unlike your own data center, when you're done using the cloud resources, you give them back. You're billed only for what you use. Instead of maintaining CPUs and storage in your data center, you rent them from the time that you need them. The cloud provider takes care of maintaining the underlying infrastructure for you. The cloud enables you to quickly solve your toughest business challenges and bring cutting-edge solutions to your users. If you are following along, sign into Microsoft Learn using your Microsoft account and get experience points as you complete the knowledge check. In this module, you learned about general cloud concepts. You started with things like understanding what cloud computing is. You also learned about shared responsibility model and how you and your cloud provider share the responsibility of keeping your information in the cloud secure. You briefly covered the differences between the cloud models, public, private, hybrid, and multi-cloud. Then you wrapped up with a unit on how the cloud shifts from IT spend, from a capital expenditure CapEx, to an operational expenditure OpEx. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.